Okay, so this video will be about if then else statement in JavaScript, and we'll see how we can apply it in Google Sheets. And again, there's going to be millions of ways you can apply this, but we'll look at a single example of how we can apply it in Google Sheets. We have some numbers here from 1 to, I don't know, 99, I guess. And what we'll do, we'll apply some if statements. So if you're familiar with regular if statements in Google Sheets, which is your if function, if I go like equals if, and then I'll do my logical test, I say if this is greater than, let's say, 50, comma, then we can do some text. So we can say hi, right? And otherwise, we're gonna do not hi. So this is our regular if function in Google Sheets. Has nothing to do with app scripts. And if we copy it down, we're gonna get this. So what we will do for a start, we'll accomplish just this using app scripts. So I'm gonna clear this out, and let's go to our app script editor and start working on it. So what we will have to do, we'll have to check this cell and see if the number is greater than 50. Then in this cell to the right, we're gonna have to place that hi or whatever, some text based on that, right? So this one is A7 cell. So let's keep that in mind. I'm gonna go to my app scripts. I don't need all this stuff here. I'm gonna start from my variable application. So spread sheet app. Perfect. And then we'll access that variable and we'll get our current active spreadsheet. We will also get our current active sheet, and we'll assign this to a variable active sheet equals this. And then within that active sheet, we'll access that cell that we had. So that cell was get range. So I said A7, that will be the 7th row, the first column. If you're not sure about what I'm doing here, go back and watch the first video about app scripts. So there it is. That's gonna get that particular cell, which is A7, and we'll go ahead and get the value from that cell. So we'll go ahead and for right now, let's store it in a variable. We'll say variable, I guess we'll call it current cell. Although that might not be the best name for this variable. Maybe we should rename it and put something else. So I'm gonna call it working cell. So that's working cell variable. We're gonna basically grab the value, which is 1, and place it in this variable. So what we'll have to do then, we're gonna have to check whether that value, which is currently 1, is greater than 50, and we'll do it using our if statement. So if statements in JavaScript have this particular syntax. So we'll have our if statement, we start here, and then inside of parentheses we do our logical test, which should output true or false as a result. So what we want to check whether this working cell that we have is greater than 50, right? If that's greater than 50, if that condition is true, right here in this parentheses, we're gonna do what's between this square brackets right here. So what we want to do, we want to go to this cell, which is our B7 cell, which will be pretty much, I'm gonna copy this, put it over here. So then I'm gonna get the active sheet, and get range, and instead of getting the value, we're gonna set the value, and we want to say high if that's that, and we want to place this in the second column. So we're saying let's go grab this number, which is the 7th row, first column, right here, get the value, place it in a variable called working cell, and then let's check if that particular number is greater than 50. We will go to this second column of the same row and set the value to high. That's pretty much all we're saying here. And I'm gonna move this to a new line here. So that's that. So that's our regular if statement. So currently, if I just go ahead and run this particular function, we shouldn't really see anything happening because it's going to check whether it is greater than 50, and it's not greater than 50, and it's not going to do anything here, which is exactly what I got. So let's put a number in that cell that's higher than 50. I'm going to go like 67, right? So let's go ahead and run the same script again. And we can see that this time, because that was a match, it's going to place high in that particular cell right here. If I change it to something smaller than 50 or even equal 50, it shouldn't really do anything. So right now it's really not going to do anything, but because there's already a high in that cell, it's going to stay high in that cell. So if I remove this and then I rerun it again, we'll see there's nothing really happening as a result of that, right? So that's that. What we're going to do now is do our else statement. So if it's greater than 50, we're going to put high, and otherwise we're going to do low, right? So that's our else statement. So there it is. So we're going to check for this condition, and if that's true, we're going to do this, and if it's false, we will just say go to that cell and put something different. So low. So this point, we're going to run this, so we should see that it still says low because it's 50. So we put 67 or something like that. We'll rerun the script. Should be able to go back and see that now it's high because we're checking that, and it says that's the number. So far we're just checking that single cell over here, and we're placing something to the right. So what we want to do, we want to just go through all of these different options from here all the way through here, and basically just go all the way down and put highs or lows and on the right. So what we'll have to do, we'll have to create a for loop, and we'll do our conditioning inside of the loop. So I'm going to go on top here before any of this and start my for loop. So I'm going to say for variable I equals 0 and I smaller than, I'm going to just put some numbers here because we're going to have to change this anyways, I plus plus, and whatever happens, it's going to be within this curly brackets. So I'm going to start that curly bracket here, and I want to end it after this whole thing happens over here. So I'm going to go here, put my curly bracket. Now when you have situations like this, it's a very good idea to use tabbing to make sure that you understand which piece of code appears within which piece of code. Now what happens is this entire thing happens within that for loop. So to make that clear, I'm going to highlight that piece of the code and hit tab and indent that code so we can see that this belongs inside of this for loop. Great. So that's our I variable, and I don't really need spaces here. Let's remove those. So that's our I, that's for loop with our I variable. First of all, we have to figure out where that loop starts. So that loop is going to start from the 7th row. So therefore, instead of starting from 0, I'm going to start from 7. And I have to finish at row 13. So I'm going to say if it's smaller than 14, or we could say or if it's smaller or equal to 13 if we don't want to use 14. So we'll say let's start from 7 and end at 13. So that's what we're going to do. So that's gonna loop through this and make it turn around this thing that many times. So it's gonna 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 times. It's gonna turn, but it's still going to be doing that operation on this same row over and over. So what we'll have to do, we'll have to replace this row 7 with a variable I to make it more dynamic. So all these occurrences of row 7 I'm going to replace with variable I, which we can think about as current row. So let's make a is our current row index. A little comment there so we know as we look at this code what that means. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and at this point if I rerun the script, go back, you should see that we were able to go through this, and whichever number is greater than 50 we're assigning high, otherwise we're assigning low. So that's our regular if then else statement that we have. So now what if we had like a mid-range, right? So let's say we want values that are above 75 to be in a high range, values that are lower than 35 to be in our low range, and everything in the middle it's gonna be something else, or whatever, maybe 25. I don't know. We'll just figure out. It doesn't matter. So what I'm going to say that if it's above 75, and if I want to include 75 in this high range, then I'm going to do greater or equal to instead of just greater, right? But right now I'm going to say greater than 75, which means in a high bracket I will include 76, 77, 78. Well, it's 75.01, it's going to be included in there. Basically, that's what we're going to do. But 75 is still going to be in the bracket below. So maybe that's the right way to do it. Maybe that's the wrong way to do it. I don't know. So actually, to make some difference in our code, let's just do greater or equal to. So we have an example of that as well. So if it's greater or equal to 75, which means with 75 we're including in our high bracket, we're going to put high. Now what I want to do, I want to add some sort of mid range in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close this one, and then I'm going to include else if statement here. And with else if statement you can do another condition here. So, and I'm gonna do the same working cell. So I'm going to say if that working cell is greater than 75, we're gonna do this. Then if that is greater than 25, so let's not include 25 in this case. So it's above 25, we're gonna include it in our mid bracket. So mid, and finally we can do, if it doesn't match this as well, then let's just for everybody else assign low. So if I save this or run this, oh, I have to run it from here. So you should be able to see 67 is mid, 7 and 2 are low, 99 is high, mid, and so we're able to assign all of them into their respective brackets. There is some misunderstanding with our if function, is that some people think that if you're doing this bracket that's greater than 75, and then you have a second bracket that's going to be like the mid-range, you have to do double condition and you have to check whether this is greater than 75, and it's the same thing is smaller then this one on top, right? This. So if we do this should still work. So instead of just saying in this else if statement we're checking whether it's greater than 25, we'll also check that it has to be less than 75 to assign it to our mid range, right? So if I run this, it should still work exactly the same way, so no problem there. And it works the same way, but this is really unnecessary statement to do in this particular case, because it works from top down, so it's going to check the first one. So if the first one occurs, it's not really going into the second or the third or any other condition that we have. So if this condition is true on top one, it's going to do this one, and then it's not going to do any others below. The same way, if this condition is true, it's going to do this one, and then it's not going to do any others. So basically on top we're checking if it's greater or equal to 75. If that condition didn't meet, then we can simply just say if it's greater than 25, because we already know it's not greater or equal to 75 because we didn't pass it here. So it's unnecessary, but if you do it, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Now finally, the last thing I want to mention, you can actually do multiple else if statements instead of just doing one. And to give you an example of that, let's just create another else if. I'm going to copy this whole thing right here, and I'm going to paste it over here. I'm repeating the same thing, and I'm going to do another range. So I'm going to say if it's greater than equal 75, then it's high. If it's greater or equal to maybe 50, we'll say high mid. If it's greater or equal to 25, or maybe greater than 25, we'll say low mid. Doesn't matter. And finally, anything else is low. So the point of here is that you can chain as many else if conditions as you want, and it will work just fine, no problem. So if I run this, let's go back. Now you can see high mid, low, high. We can assign to different brackets. And that's our if then else if statement in JavaScript. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for new AppScript videos.